Welcome to the first video of 2024, and today we're going to be talking about Grandpa's gears. I mean, triple cranksets. I'm just joking, but we have seen a genuine resurgence of interest in triples, and I thought today would be a really good time to talk about what makes a triple crankset and talk about the pros and cons to see if a triple is right for your build. Before we get into the weeds, let's go over what makes a triple crankset. Well, a triple refers to 3 chain rings on your crankset. So for example, you can have a single with 1 chain ring, you can have a double with 2 chain rings, you can have a triple, a quadruple, and a quintuple. Those last 2 are mostly jokes, but we've actually done a quintuple on our blog, and I'm sure I can dig up a picture of a quintuple and I'll put it right here. For decades, the triple was the go-to for touring, commuting, randonneuring, and mountain biking. They gave you a very wide range of gears when your cassette had a very narrow set of cogs, basically from 11 to 28. And it allowed you to go up any sort of hill you wanted to, even when you were completely loaded down with gear. With the triple, you basically had 3 sets of gears. You had in the big ring, where you could basically cruise along and go downhill, not have to really worry about spinning out and running out of gear on the high end. The middle ring was basically your all day long cruising gear. You could stay in the middle ring and change the gearing in the cassette, and all would be right. And then when you hit a really big hill, you had the bailout granny gear, which was very small, and that was your climbing gear. Now you also had different configurations for your triples depending on the discipline that was being ridden. So you had your mountain bikers with typically bias towards lower gears to climb up really steep inclines and really steep, short, punchy sections. You had your touring gear, which was basically kind of in the middle ground. And then you had your road gearing, which was typically higher for higher speeds and, bikes that weren't loaded down as much. Now you also had my personal favorite, which is the half-step triple, which basically allowed you to have a tooth differential between the biggest chainring and the middle chainring of 6 or 8 teeth instead of the usual 14 tooth. And basically that gave you a really nice middle and high end. And then if you had a hill that you absolutely were not going to walk, you drop it into the granny gear and you spin up that hill as fast as your little legs will take you. Now, as gearing in the rear got wider, going from 11/28 to 32 to 36, triples kind of began to run out of favor. You had a lot of duplicate gears, you had a lot of gearing that you simply never used. So doubles became much more popular for a lot of disciplines, but you can kind of see where this progression is going. Whereas now, the vast majority of bikes come as one-bys, which means they have 1 chainring in the front and they have a very wide range in the back. I mean, mountain bikes have nowadays from 9 to 52 teeth, which is a huge range. And with that gearing, you also have an added simplicity. So commuters don't really need a super wide range of gears because they're not going as fast as a roadie is going, and they're not climbing the same mountains that mountain biker is riding. And then for gravel riders, something in the middle usually works. They're crushing the gravel or scooping up the limestone or eating dirt or whatever it is that gravel riders do. But that progression from triples to doubles to singles is very real. Now there are a couple hiccups here, and it's mostly to do with cycle tourists and randonneurs. And basically what they experience is a huge variety of terrain. They could be climbing mountains or they could be descending. And one-by can't take care of that whole range. Even a wide range double has a little bit of issues with the lowest as well as the highest. And so with the triple having a much wider range in the chain rings, you basically have the vast majority of your gearing covered. So triples look really cool, they function well, and they give you a really wide range. So what are some of the downsides? Well, right now it's compatibility with shifters and derailleurs. There simply aren't very many of them. I mean, before you could get Dura-Ace triple integrated drifters, and now they don't make those anymore. You could get high quality indexed clicky flat bar shifters. They don't really make those anymore either. So you're kind of relegated to friction up front, which means thummies, it means bar end shifters, it means down tubes, and something that Grotech is going to be coming out with, which we'll show you in a different video. Now let's put our smocks on and work on this polyvalent that's behind me. We're going to put a triple crankset on it, a triple front derailleur, and a long cage rear derailleur. So let's go! And let's take a look at the crank we're going to use. It's a VO triple with a 48, 34, 24 chainring configuration. Nice wide range, has a nice bailout gear, and a great range for a top end as well. So let's get this thrown on. Now, what are we going to use on this build? Are we going to use Sora? No. Are we going to use Campagnolo? No. Are we going to use this weird bird? No. We're going to use vintage Dior. Look at that. It's so pretty. It has nice long cage. Look at that. First things first, let's grease up the threads. And we'll put a little bit on the bottom bracket as well. There we are. I got my squeaky shoes on today. Non-drive side going in. And drive side. Now with our triple, we suggest using a 124 millimeter bottom bracket spindle, and that's what we're using today. Tighten it down, good and tight, and same thing on the other side. All right, bottom bracket officially installed. A little bit of grease on the taper, never hurt anybody. Same thing on the non-drive side. And let's start putting on the crankset. $8 millimeter for the crank bolt. Okay. And same thing for the non-drive side. Crankset officially on. Now before we get to installing our old stuff, let's take a look at something a little bit more modern. This is the same generation of Shimano Sora front derailleurs. This one's a double, and this one's a triple. Take a look at the cage size for the double. Notice how narrow this is. Now here's the triple. Look how tall that is. It's so that the front derailleur can pick up the chain from the smallest chainring to the middle. I really like this generation. Sora of this generation, which is, let's see, FD3503, is super simple. It looks nice. Honestly, this or 105 is pretty much the best modern-ish front derailleur you can get. And they're cheap. But I'm also a sucker for a matched vintage group. So, this is what we're going to use. It still has that tall cage. It's silver. It has nice patina. And it functions really nicely. So let's get these guys on. All right, not a lot of people know this, but this whole generation is the Dior Sspeed. And this is the thummy that came off the bike that this whole group was on. Now this is a 7-speed indexed thummy, but this one has the secret 8th click. So listen. So here's 1, 2, 6, 7, 8. There's that 8th click. So this does both 7 and 8 speed indexed. Rear derailleur going on. A little bit of grease on that bolt. 5 millimeter. Now I already put an 8-speed cassette on this guy. So that should give a nice range. Ooh, that looks sharp. Look at that. Look at that actuation. Front derailleur going on. I put a little bit of grease on that bolt because it is quite dry. There we go. Needs to come down a little bit. Let's come down some more. All right, let's tighten it down. That's good alignment. That should shift really nicely. All right, let's get the chain routed. So we'll start in the back, move our way forwards, and then we'll move our way backwards. Onto the chain ring, on the little chain ring. Man, I love working on this vintage stuff. It's just so simple. There's nothing sort of special about it. It just works. It looks nice. It's easy to install. Through the cage, around the jockey wheels. Okay, let's size it. Looks like we need to take out, say, 3 pairs of links. Got our handy dandy chain tool. Make sure I'm taking out the right one. Yep, that's correct. All right, all the way through. Back it out. Quick link going on. Now let's see if we have the arm strength to do this while the bike is in the stand. What do you think? So we have the arm strength to set the quick link with the bike in the stand. I'm holding the wheel in place and pushing really hard on the crank. Ugh, now. Not strong enough today. Didn't have my Wheaties. We're on to plan B then. Here's a technique that I use sometimes. Basically turn it 90 degrees, take your pliers at this sort of an angle, and then you just squeeze really hard. And that set it in place. Let's set that high gear. For this derailleur, the upper one is the high gear and this one's the low one. So we're gonna screw this guy out a little bit, get it lined up. Perfect. So for simplicity, I just rigged up some down tube shifters, and I think this will serve our needs for this display application. Cable going through its slot. All right, rear derailleur installed. All right, let's move that rear derailleur into its lowest gear. A little bit of low end adjustment. There we are. Perfect. All right, now we need to adjust the front derailleur chain line because look at that. That is rubbing on the outside of the derailleur cage, and it is in the right spot right here. This one adjusts the low end of the gear range, so we're going to screw that in just until that cage looks like it's going to be touching the inboard part of the chain. Perfect. front derailleur cable going in. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope you found it entertaining or interesting or something in the middle. As always, be sure to like and subscribe for more, and happy riding.